Hi everyone, and welcome to Worth the Calories. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Catherine.
So we ran
We
out
were
of time,
poorly sick.
could not record the final episode for Series 12, the 2021 series. And we've had lots of messages from people in the time since saying, hey, could you do that? In very nice words. So we want to do that particularly as a warm-up for the new series. So this is your
2021 delayed gratification finale episode?
Maybe so. You'll be glad to hear we've done lots of baking for this to warm up and practice as well. The long version of the story is we were absolutely going through this. We watched the final. We had thoughts. In the week, I baked Belgian Buns, the technical challenge, to have them ready. And then we caught COVID. Some of you might have heard that there was COVID and a pandemic and all sorts of things. That was the time that we caught it, so we couldn't record. And then because it was December, it then became Christmas.
Life happened.
And then as we started to get a bit more time back and start to look to record, we caught COVID again. April, I think.
Just after UK Mother's Day.
Yeah, that sort of time.
Late March, wasn't it?
So life has gotten in the way, and the illness has gotten in the way, but we are mostly healthy at the moment. So we wanted to record and get this done. So there was actually something for you.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I've missed podcasting with you, my love, and I've missed baking. Whilst I've tried a bit of bread and stuff like that, I haven't been baking with quite the same regularity as we do during our bake-off season. And so it's been great fun this weekend, sort of just getting back at it.
Nice. If you can't remember, the final was Giuseppe, Christelle and Chigs. It was a very even final, so 3 people who had won Star Baker twice. They'd had handshakes once or twice each.
Yeah, all even Stevens, wasn't it?
And Christelle was the only one who hadn't won the technical. So they were, very, very even on the thing. The signature challenge was carrot cake.
Yeah.
But a properly delectable, beautiful carrot cake.
Yes, elevated.
Yes, absolutely. Were there any in there that stood out to you that you particularly liked, that were interesting?
To be honest, I just love carrot cake.
Okay.
So I would happily have eaten any of them.
Right.
But if you'd said which one should I make,
right,
I'd have chosen the one that Giuseppe made.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Which is the one that the recipe came out for.
Hurrah!
So he made Torta Camila, an Italian cake with carrots. Now, I'm not sure whether it's actually an Italian carrot cake. I think what it is it's an Italian what have we got in the cupboard cake that you can sort of do different things with. But he made it carrot-based with a fig and walnut jam.
Whoa.
As the others went as well, there's a fair amount of spice in there. He went for cinnamon and ginger, but the others used star anise, cardamom, and various things of that ilk. Which feels like the right way to go with carrot. You're not necessarily going to go to chocolate and sweetness.
Yeah, I agree. That's not the point of a carrot cake. I don't think. I think chocolate would completely drown out the carrotiness.
Yes.
And actually, chocolate dipped carrot. No, thank you.
but as an example of something else you could put in, it feels like spices are the right addition to the recipe.
Yes, I agree. Spices, maybe more nuts. But I think that's just because I really enjoy a sort of a
carrot and walnut.
Carrot and walnut. Yeah. Is carrot and walnut a traditional thing? It feels like a natural thing to say.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe hazelnuts.
I think there's usually a nut on top of the cream cheese frosting thing as well. So, yeah.
Nice.
So I did make that.
and listener, I can vouch it was delicious.
And there was a lot of it because it's 3 layers.
It's enormous, but delicious.
I'm very interested by how different the recipe was, both from what he made and what was on the show, and from other recipes we've had.
Do you think that, and like, because it was interesting, because we watched the show again after you'd made it, right?
Yes.
Do you think that they tried to simplify the recipe?
Possibly. Because the biggest difference is that I made 3 cakes, where he made 1 cake and sliced it. Which means you have to bake it for longer, but it's, I think, slightly easier to cool because you're opening up the inside of the cake. It doesn't have the sort of firmer outer layer. So you can potentially cool it quicker. We might talk a little bit more on the fig and walnut jam, but particularly the recipe did not say to take the skins off the figs, so I didn't. And then when we watched it, he definitely did. His was a very smooth jam, which he also cooked the walnuts into.
Yeah.
Whereas the recipe said, as the jam's cooling, stir the walnuts in. And that feels quite a pronounced difference.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very
And
strange.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the sort of quite lumpy figgy jam that you made, which I enjoyed on my toast this morning, I thought it was really delicious. But I love figs. But I can see that what he produced would be a much smoother consistency. Yeah.
And that then brings whole questions of, it said 600 grams of quartered figs.
Right.
Is that 600 grams quartered figs and then you take the skin off? You take the skin off and all the seeds and pulp come to 600 grams? Because that's a lot.
And taking the skin off, is that all of the skin, or just the sort of the really harder outer layer of skin? Because there's like various layers to a fig, aren't there?
I think I would do it a bit like a melon. I would sort of, not worry if I'm catching some of that, but aim for mostly just the seeds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was interesting. But the other real difference that it felt compared to other recipes is that it was more intuition.
Okay.
And it was more like, I mean, the whole recipe, and I'm definitely going to talk about this in a second, the whole recipe is more like cooking than baking.
Okay.
Because it's peeling of carrots and grating carrots, and it's zesting something and then putting in dashes of spice and salt and so on, which is not my go-to.
So less precise.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's where I like, and not even that. Yes, the precision is there, but also the preparing.
Okay.
Baking has less preparing, and that's one of the things I don't enjoy with cooking. Is right, I've got to chop all these vegetables and I've got to stew something for a minute and do it in state.
You quite like the sort of the scientific experiment method of baking, rather.
Yeah,
and we've spoken about this before, that I'm more of a cook than a baker, really.
You have more intuition with it, I think, and more like, oh, it needs this flavour or it needs a bit more salt and so on. Whereas I'm like, I just do not have that mindset of how to change that.
And possibly a natural tendency to colour outside of the lines.
Yes,
I'm like, I
do
not wish to follow your instructions.
But particularly for the making of the jam, every other time we've made jam, it's get your jam thermometer in there, boil it to this temperature, keep it for this many minutes at this temperature, and so on. Whereas this was simmer it until the sugar dissolves and then boil it for 8 to 10 minutes.
You see, that makes my heart sing and makes me think, gosh, maybe I would be interested in making more jam, because all of the faffing around with the sugar thermometers, not for me.
Well, because it's never come out well for us. I think we've always, I think we've overdone it. Is part of the problem. We've cooked it for too long. Whereas this jam came out really well. It was a really good consistency. And it was very tasty.
Yes, because we've made some very hard, globby, chewy jams before
wouldn't be amiss on a lolly,
Yeah, absolutely.
from a packet of sweets.
Taffy rather than jam.
So I was really interested in that it just had more of that vibe going on with it. I mean, it also had double low flour, which is the like really, really highly milled, very fine flour.
That's an Italian thing.
Which is a very Italian thing. And then it said to sieve that as well. Make this as fine as possible.
Did it just like drop through the sieve?
Well, it really did feel like these are the hints they give you, having done some experimentation and done some testing. But again, very interesting that it was different than his.
Yes.
And it was also, there was no butter in the cakes.
Really?
It was... The start of it was egg and sugar, light brown sugar, and vanilla, and whisk it until it's 3 times its volume.
Okay.
But it also had baking powder, so that whisking wasn't necessarily as a raising agent.
Yeah.
But was to give it some of that sort of silkiness.
Okay.
What it did have was some oil.
Okay.
So like that's how the fat gets in there, and 225 grams of orange juice.
Well, that's fascinating.
Right.
See, I don't really know very much about Italian cakes, but I wonder if that's a more common thing in Italian recipes.
Yeah, maybe. You know, when you think of Mediterranean countries that have lots of lemons and oranges and citrus fruits growing, that might be an easier way to deal with it than having butter around that you can't keep chilled very easily. And
maybe. I think after we finish this, I'm going to go and Google traditional Italian cake making.
Yeah, because I think we had this sort of cake in Bologna. Because they served me a birthday cake at the hotel.
Yes.
And I think it was effectively this cake, but without all the different ingredients, all the different flavours in there.
Yeah.
So,
do you think for home baking that 2 layers would be sufficient of that cake?
Yeah.
That's like, especially looking at it taking over like a whole shelf in our fridge at home. I'm like, I mean, it's amazing. It's very impressive, but it's completely over the top for just a sort of slice of cake with your 11's cup of tea style cake.
And I think there was so much in there, it wouldn't be too difficult to actually only make 2/3 of the recipe anyway. There were 4 eggs, so you'd go down to 3, you know.
It could be scaled down quite easily. Especially with that app that you're using. What's it called?
Paprika.
Yes.
We're sponsored, but we're not sponsored by, but we all recommend.
It's pretty cool.
No, in fact, no.
It's really good.
Let's not give them a shout out. If you work for Paprika, we will give you a shout out and talk about all the ways that we enjoy your app. But come and talk to us first. And this is before we talk about putting things in our Hoover oven. Hey, if you work for Hoover, we do not name check anyone until they give us money.
Or cake.
Or cake, yeah.
Will work for cake.
So that was an interesting bake. Like I said, I liked it as a warm up to getting into the new season.
Yeah.
Actually, it was nice to get probably hands on again, like you said.
And again, I remember this from. I mean, honestly, just watching the finale made me so excited for the new season.
Right.
But I remember last season, my feeling about the way they used the signature bake was very, very positive. And again, it's like a carrot cake. We all know what a carrot cake is.
Yep.
Now put a twist on it.
But make a final worthy carrot cake.
Yeah. I really liked that as a concept. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
They all did fine. No one excelled because they all pushed themselves perhaps a little too much.
Yeah, and Chigs, I think, showed his understandably lack of experience by putting like a gazillion
almost a kilo of carrots in it.
A gazillion carrots into his cake. And I think it just became more like a steamed pudding, really. Yeah,
a little bit. Which, you know, fine. They probably didn't have enough time to practice.
Yeah. Well, by the time you've got to the finale, because most of your pre-show practicing time is surely around the bakes that you're doing in the first few weeks.
It was nice that for all of them, presentation was so important. Obviously, Christelle got a reputation through the show of doing beautiful cakes, but they put a lot of emphasis on that.
Yes.
And I think that is, I think it is important. It's an easy way for the viewer to differentiate.
Yeah.
And it really, you know, it's I'm going to say easy to make a tasty cake. It's not, you know, it's not easy for everyone, but it is not too difficult to just put some sugar and some butter and flour and eggs in a thing and make something quite tasty.
Yeah.
But to make something that tastes really good and looks really good actually takes a lot of extra effort and skill and practice. So I think that's I do appreciate the show goes for that.
And I must admit, I think that again was an improvement from the previous season, where a few times, like the end result as who was going out each week, we were like, I get that you said that cake tasted amazing and that's why that person is staying in. But it was really hard for us at home to see what looks like a little bit of a rough and ready cake being judged significantly higher than something that looked a lot more professionally executed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
good.
It was good.
So the technical was Belgian Buns.
Belgian Buns.
Which we've both done, but I did it like 9 months ago. So I think you, having done it this morning,
indeed,
can probably talk more to Belgian Buns.
Can you tell how much icing sugar I've consumed today?
Not anymore since you cleaned up.
So I thought, so I thought we could get this done and then go out later this morning because, you know, I looked at the recipe and it said it's 1 hour of prep time, 20 minutes of baking. What it didn't have was the hour and 45 minutes of proving. So it has taken me significantly longer to sort of go from start to finish.
Right.
But actually, I really enjoyed making the Belgian buns. I mean, I've said before that actually bread making is something that I want to get better at. And I think this is well, the nature of them is much more akin to a bread
Very
than a
much.
cake.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed sort of getting my kneading board out again.
Okay.
It was a really, really well written recipe, I think. So basically, it's a slightly enriched dough. So we've got some milk and some butter in the dough itself.
Okay.
A bit of kneading. Basically, bring the dough together. Really quite a straightforward dough to bring together. Quite a straightforward dough to knead. What I found was I really did follow their instructions to only lightly flour my kneading board, because I think what I've done in the past is put way too much flour on my board for the kneading, which has maybe slightly disrupted the consistency of my dough.
Right.
But was like, right, I'm just going to try it very lightly floured. And I did get a bit of sticking, but actually what I found was if I carried on kneading a bit, everything got a bit less sticky, and I was able to scrape up the little bits that had stuck to the board, incorporate it into the dough, and then I was good. So as soon as I started kneading it for a while, the real stickiness of the dough went away.
And did that give you like feedback on how much the kneading was working, of incorporating the liquid elements and the flour elements, so you could tell how it was progressing?
It certainly gave me feedback that the kneading was having an effect.
Okay.
Because it went from what was a little bit of a sticky, certainly sticky in parts dough, to something that was... It felt like a really nice sort of smooth, silky consistency. It wasn't a heavy dough, but it was good. I used our proving drawer to stick the oiled bowl in for it to rise.
Nice.
But what I did this time, so previously I've tried our proving drawer, but left the sort of the heating element on while something's been proving, and I think that's been a little bit much because it all heats from the bottom.
Okay.
So what I did this time was basically use the heating elements to get the drawer to a nice temperature, then turned it off, so we've not got extra heat coming in directly at the bottom of the batter. I also put a plastic cutting board. It is a carving board. It's the one with the spiky bits that we put recipe. But anyway, I put a plastic chopping board in the drawer also just to protect the bottom of the bowl with the dough in from being very much in contact with the very hot bit. And that worked quite nicely.
Yes, I wonder if using some of the wire racks and so on, so like you say, they're not in direct contact.
Yes.
Might be the way. And this is the sort of thing we can do some A/B testing on over the course of the season. And
exactly, because I felt having too much sort of one-directional heat whilst it's proving might sort of... Cook it, make the yeast not work because it's a yeasted dough. But anyway, it rose nicely.
Good.
Whilst it's proving the first time, you make the lemon curd. Once again, my mind is blown by how easy it is to make lemon curd. Why do I ever buy lemon curd is the question. So lemon curd was really easy. I don't think it's cheating because we just didn't have a lemon in the house, but we had a lemon juice in a bottle in the fridge. Again, I'm probably not going to, unless we have spare lemons, I'm probably never going to squeeze and zest a lemon again just to make lemon curd, because actually throwing a dash of lemon juice from a bottle in worked perfectly well. Although, if anyone can tell me exactly how many millilitres of juice one lemon is supposed to produce, I would be most grateful, because mine was that much. Who knows?
Did a lovely echo device from some company who's not paid us, did that not be able to tell you?
True, I didn't ask it. I just went, I'll just punt it.
We will ask her next time.
As I say, I'm a bit more of a let's wing it type of baker. So yeah, that was good. One argument I did have with the recipe was like, it's basically said with the curd, you melted the butter and the sugar and and the lemon juice over a bain marie, and then you whisked your egg and your egg yolk and put that in, and then whisked it all together, and then it just said leave it to cook for 8 minutes, and I started just leaving it to cook, but then I realised it was cooking in a very inconsistent manner across the curd, and so I started sort of whisking it a bit more as it was cooking, and even now I can see when I spread the lemon curd across the dough, I can see it was a little bit lumpier than I would have liked it to be. So I think next time I make lemon curd, I'm going to ignore the leave it to cook, and actually I'm going to gently stir and whisk it throughout the time it's cooking over the bain marie.
So you cooked it in a bain marie?
Yes.
In our sort of melting bowls?
I cooked it in a Pyrex glass dish over a pan of simmering water. It's bain marie in it.
But I think that's when you're cooking with gas.
So we'd probably be all right.
We could have done that just on the heavy button pan.
Fair enough. Yes, maybe also something to experiment with, because as I commented to some of my friends as I was baking, it's like, I could probably just sit and eat this with a spoon right now. Like, do I really have to put it in the bread? But yes, anyway, so bread came out of the proving drawer.
Okay.
You are supposed to roll it into a rectangle 30 centimetres by 40 centimetres. Okay. My dough rolling skills are not good. Right. I would say I'm still not entirely sure how one is supposed to roll a round lump of dough into a rectangle. Okay. I kind of produced a wobbly oval that was roughly 30 centimetres by 40 centimetres, spread the lemon curd across it, drop over your many sultanas. And then what was interesting is you're supposed to press one end of the dough down onto the board to make it very stable,
yep.
and then roll it tightly towards you. So you've got a roll. That went pretty well. And then you're supposed to chop it into 12 slices for the next proving. I don't think my knife was sharp enough because I think by the end of my chopping, and I tried different sort of chopping styles, my roll was a very squished oval with a very flat bottom. So I think if I was going to do it again, I would sharpen the knife and I would wipe the knife between each chop.
Right.
Just to cut through neatly.
One of the reasons why it's been quite good to do the warm-up is we can figure things like this and go, oh, let's have a session sharpening the knives, ready for any baking we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So that then was, we want sharper knives. And the other thing we want is proving bags, because the next step I was supposed to prove, well, I did prove it again, but we were supposed to put the 12 sliced rolls on the baking trays and put them in baking proving bags.
Right.
But I'm very glad I didn't just go, I have failed to find them. Instead, I went, I can't see them easily, and just put some cling film over the top, but it turns out we don't have any.
I think we might be out of them.
If I'd spent half an hour pulling everything out of the baking cupboard, I still wouldn't have found them. So my natural laziness has won. Yes. And that was also interesting because the baking trays that I used, we couldn't fit two of them at the same time into the proving drawer, so I used the wire cooling racks to stack them up, and that worked quite well because the proving drawer is quite deep. Okay. So they rose. I did an egg wash on them, and then I baked them, and I learned to read the recipe more carefully because you're supposed to bake them at a higher temperature for 10 minutes and a lower temperature for 10 minutes. My higher temperature, I merrily stuck them at 200 degrees centigrade, but actually a fan oven, you're supposed to put them in 180. Right. So I cooked them way too hot for 10 minutes, and then I compensated by cooking them lower than the 160 that was supposed to be in them for 10 minutes. They came out all right, didn't they?
I don't think it's done them any harm whatsoever.
I think it's absolutely fine, because I was a bit worried after the first 10 minutes, because I'm supposed to be baking them until they're golden brown. They are already golden brown, but I'm pretty sure they're a little bit doughy and raw in the middle. So, but they got the full 20 minutes, and maybe my maths is off, but they averaged out at roughly the right temperature. So it's good.
And what do you think of them, having made them?
I think they're a good recipe. I think they're very tasty. I love lemon. Okay. So lemon's a flavour I go to, and in fact I made the icing even more lemony than it should have been because we didn't have the zest. So I just replaced half the water with lemon juice. It was good. I really enjoyed baking them. I just really enjoyed the making again. I would say that was a good bake. Would I do it just for the sake of doing it? Maybe. I might be interested to try different fillings. So maybe what would it be like to put Nutella in the middle and then roll them up?
I see. Yeah.
And and just sort of but it was a good. I enjoyed the dough. I'd also be interested to see what does that just bake like in like round balls as a slightly sweet.
Because it feels like the sort of thing if you'd be making a not an eclair, like a jam finger thing. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. It feels very much like that sort of dough. Yeah. Because I remember making them and you have to watch them at that baking stage because they can really dry out. And I think that's what we saw a bit on the show itself, which is Happy overcooking his. And I think that's the difference between Italian baking in some ways. That he probably, it's a bread, so I need to cook it more as a bready thing, whereas we do stuff like this and we're perhaps more accustomed to it being softer. Yeah.
And actually also, like something like a panettone is pretty dry.
Yeah.
And that's not a problem because you have it with stuff that gives it the moisture it needs to counteract the dryness. But yeah, it's good.
So that was the big difference. Obviously, Chigs hadn't done it before, so he rolled it the wrong way and sliced it the wrong way.
Yep.
It happens, although, they didn't look terrible.
No,
Quite an interesting
I'd
way of
happily
doing
eaten
them as almost as sort of smaller portions for if you were doing it for a party or something.
Yeah.
It feels like that sort of recipe where if we had to bake for a load of kids coming over or your brownie group or taking something into the office, this is not a bad option to do. I made a selection of cakes, here you go.
Yeah, you could do it smaller, and you could do it with fruit jams like raspberry jam and Nutella. And,
they feel like a good thing to do for a sort of summer. Where cakes often lend themselves very much to a sort of wintry, they're a bit heavier, a bit more filling. This is a more everyday sort of thing.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, and Christelle won her first technical.
Huzzah!
So we said about it being pretty even, and this was the time that it made complete evenness across them. These were clearly the 3 best this year.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was such a good final.
So the final showstopper was the Mad Hatter's Tea Party.
Yes.
Where they had to do, I think it was defined as a selection of different things, but with a bread, with a cake, with a pastry, with, all sorts of different things going in there.
Yeah, a bit of sweetness, bit of savoury.
Exactly. Lots of different options. Again, the design, the look of them, everyone had gone the right way with it to make something interesting. And you start seeing a slight blending of what they do for this bake-off, the in inverted commas, normal amateur bake-off, and bake-off the professionals. Because it had some of that presentation going on. So again, we're seeing the fact that these shows are on and everyone watches them and talks about them. You can learn things from each. And,
yes, absolutely.
We should probably talk about Christelle's focaccia. And as a reminder for our listeners, the podcats are still here. That was Kira maybe showing up. We'll see if it comes through on the mics.
Yes. Yeah, Christelle's focaccia was a little bit heartbreaking,
That's
wasn't
such a shame,
it?
yeah.
But I also am like, I don't quite know what she thought she was doing. Because that's not how you make a focaccia.
No.
And she did make a comment when she was talking about, or when she, before the judging, when she was doing it, she said, I only learned this on Bread Week.
We didn't learn quite that badly. And whether she thought, you can effectively drown the dough, and it's okay, but I wonder if it's drown it to a certain point. You don't
because I mean,
keep it submerged.
It just felt like when she cooked it through, it felt like she'd basically deep fried the dough in the oven by putting that much oil in the oven with the dough.
Yeah.
It was such a shame.
It is a real shame, because I don't know whether she would have won had it come out normally, because actually watching it back, the first time we watched it, it felt like she had lost the show.
Yes.
It was hers to lose, effectively, having won the technical and everyone been very even on that first one. But actually, Giuseppe's was very good. Oh. And he did an interesting range of stuff. And he did really good presentational stuff. So I think, let's talk the winner.
Yes.
I think he was a worthy winner.
Oh, absolutely.
I think from what I've seen, certainly doing one of his bakes and looking at more of it, he has that intuition of, I need to do this. Let's put these flavours together.
Yes.
Let's do, I think he's got a lot of knowledge that clearly, from the way he talked about it, he's learned from his dad.
Yeah.
I think the other two would also have been worthy winners, but Chigs had obviously excelled just getting that far, and I think whilst he was competing for it, he sort of knew.
I think Chigs had won for himself by simply being in the final.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of what he was aiming as his potential uppermost. I mean, I wouldn't have been negative if Chigs had won.
No.
But yes, but there were a couple of things where you're like, you won't have done this before because you have only been baking for a year, and there is a limit in one's life as to how much you can bake. I mean, and the amount he learnt in that year is outstanding.
And clearly, he was someone ready to learn and just soak in all the knowledge everyone was giving him, and so. And Christelle was clearly disappointed.
Yeah.
But I liked at the end when she was talking, and she got emotional talking about Giuseppe and why he won and how good he was and the family connection there. I think that was actually a lovely moment. That was her showing that she was really pleased for him. Yeah,
I mean, she's a good loser.
Yes,
Do you know what I mean? I don't
absolutely.
think there was no bitterness, no, it should have been me, no hours spent, well, certainly not on camera, castigating her for herself for whatever she was thinking with that focaccia. So yeah, no, it was good.
And I've critiqued the show before for not necessarily giving us the narrative of why things have happened. And I think they gave us the good narrative here. about why they won, why they lost, what had happened on the show. Partially because it happened within one episode, so it was easier to do.
Yeah.
But also the overall of why they all got here and the evenness between them. And
it was just such a satisfying finale.
yeah. I think it might be one of the best finals they've had. But I think we said this while the show was on. This might be the best series they've done.
Yeah.
I think it
really
was
good.
really good. I think there were good challenges, good weeks. And I still think for the series coming up, there are changes they could have made that they're clearly not making. But it makes me excited for what's coming if they can maintain this, or just continue delivering a good show, because 13 years is a long time for anything, particularly a competitive show.
Yeah.
But it still has that enjoyableness to it.
Is there anything you're hoping they will bake on the show this season so that we can bake it? Sorry, that question was totally out of the blue, wasn't it?
Same question for you. Is there anything you hope they're going to bake?
Well, I hope... not anything in particular, but
Okay.
I hope there is a bake containing salted caramel. I hope there is a bake containing cherries. And if it was going to make me really happy, there would be a bake that contained both cherries and chocolate.
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping for. And I'm hoping for at least one bready type bake outside of bread week.
Okay.
Because I really like making bread
Yeah.
and bread-esque type bakes.
Bread adjacent.
Bread-esque. Bread adjacent. It doesn't have to be a loaf of bread, but like a sort of a yeasted roll like today. That's what I want.
Okay. Very much the same. I feel like we've done lots of sponges over the last year or two. Mm-hmm. And it might be obviously having just done the sponge today as well. So I'm more into perhaps, one or two as it goes on, but getting to do some other skills, other ways of baking, so I can sort of see the differences in how different cultures do it, different approaches to it, different techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I am also hoping for not having to buy too much specialist equipment.
Yeah, that's that. I think we've come to an accord on that. That actually, let's not.
Yeah, it's not the buying of it; it's the storing.
It's
of
then storing of it and going. We're clearly never going to use this again, but just in case.
E-Bushkiva pan.
E-Bushkiva pan. Yeah, we do now have a deep fat fryer, so I would like there to be a really good deep fat fryer week.
Fine.
So we get to do something that's not churros or donuts.
Yeah.
Fair
enough.
Is there something that would be interesting with them?
Yeah.
And we can do a weekend where we do chicken katsu or chicken
Karaage.
Yep.
Nice.
So we'll be back weekly as the new show comes out. It starts on September 13th. So we will also be posting pictures of our bakes and our efforts and what we do as it goes along.
Yeah.
You can follow the show on Instagram at Eloquent Gushing, or the hashtag Worth the Calories. And you can find Catherine
also on Instagram, actually. That's probably the best place to find me, at KendoCat on Instagram.
Excellent. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, can't wait. Now let's go eat some more buns.